Hey, how you guys doing? Yet another video in my car. I'm trying to maximize time, so the light is always a little bit strange and off. Might be a couple of cars driving around, driving past. So yeah, just bear with me as I go through this. So in this video, I'm going to talk about the fact that adults are actually not the enemy. Now, that might seem the way to you guys, but they really, for the most part, are not. Now, being a teacher for over 13 years now, I could say that teachers, for the most part, are not the enemy either. For the most part, teachers want the best for the young people that they interact with, and also so that they can avoid any unnecessary confrontation or friction with the people in their class, which would ultimately lead to a waste of headspace for all parties involved. But why do I say this? So I think teenagers think that teachers want to make their lives difficult. And we often have the naughtiest, most obnoxious teenagers or students in our class say things like that. Why are you always on my case? It's really quite simple. If you don't step out of line, if you show respect, follow the rules, don't have a bad attitude towards all things school, teachers wouldn't be on your case. It's actually that simple. While teachers understand that teenagers will push the boundaries and break rules, the attitude in which it is done is the enemy and not the teacher. So this is probably quite a direct one right at you guys. You see, teachers don't like bad attitudes. And I suppose that's with anybody. They don't like someone with an attitude. It's that simple. So if you have acknowledged that you have stepped out of line, broken a rule, then take your punishment, learn from your mistake, and move on. And then there is no friction. But when you start showing disrespect, that is when things really start going wrong. And the teacher is not the enemy here. And you are not the enemy to the teacher, if that makes sense. Okay? Because all that is the enemy there is the bad attitude. Okay? And that creates the animosity, the friction between you and your teacher. Can bad attitudes be fixed? Yes, absolutely. Can teenagers acknowledge their disrespectful ways and make them right? Of course they can. But the moment they do that, for the most part, teachers will change their attitudes too. I've seen that in my own teaching experience. In a number of times when teenagers have had terrible attitudes and over time have changed their attitudes, developed a far better way of approaching things with teachers, and the teachers change their attitudes too. Now, I've spoken enough about teachers because I will obviously try and defend teachers to some extent, and just saying that the enemy is not the teacher, it's the attitude. And that is what will get the friction going between a teenager and a teacher. But this is the next thing. Your parents aren't the enemy either. Now, the reason I say that they're not the enemy is because I am a parent. And I'm not trying to defend us again, okay? But what I want to say is that parenting is really, really tough. There's no one-size-fits-all book to help you do it, okay? You kind of figure this out as you go along. And you will very clearly make mistakes as well. And each child is different. And so parents try and figure out what is the best way on a day-to-day basis, child-by-child basis, to figure out how they're going to do these things. Now, just because parents are adults doesn't mean that they know all the answers. I definitely don't. And once again, for the most part, parents want the best for their children. When they make rules and set guidelines for behavior, they're actually trying to do what they think is best for you. Even if it might not seem like it to you, one day it will. Okay, I can look at that. I can say that about myself. I wasn't allowed to, I could hardly do anything when I was a teenager. And I fought with my parents. It drove me crazy. But there were things that they did let me do and let me build up trust as well, that I wasn't going to let them down and disappoint them in the process. But you see, parents try and see a bigger picture of what is most important for their child's life and make all their decisions based on that. So they will make decisions most of the times informed by their experiences of growing up and then talking with other parents so that they can ultimately try and protect you and look after you as best as they can. That's really actually what they're doing. They're probably not getting it right all of the time. Granted, okay? I didn't like some of the decisions my parents made, and neither did I think that they really had my best interest and safety at heart. Again, no one has ever taken the time to say that to teenagers. Now, I'm not saying these things to help parents, okay? Not at all. I'm saying this to help you better understand that where your parents are coming from, and perhaps that you can trust them to make some right decisions for you. So I hope that makes sense. Like, I don't want to defend parents here, okay? Perhaps I've defended teachers a little bit, but I'm saying this because maybe you can actually understand where adults are coming from. Because understanding teenagers is quite difficult. And that's why I'm doing this kind of thing as well. So this leads me to 2 more points. The first is that parents will make mistakes. And when they do, they all too often won't or don't apologize for them. The reason I say that, and the reason I know that, is because when I've asked teenagers in my classes, like, what is the one thing you want to ask your parents, or what gripe do you have with your parents? So often, the one thing that comes up in the first batch of things, and it's a common thing, is that parents don't apologize when they're wrong. Now, again, I'm not going to defend them in any way here. I cannot defend someone that doesn't want to apologize for themselves. Okay? When I make a mistake with my kids, I apologize and say, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done it like that. And then I'll make sure that I don't do it again. So, when parents make a mistake, the usual way of doing things, okay, is that they'll try and blame it on you and possibly shout louder and say things like, you know what, I know what I'm talking about. Do I have any reason why some parents don't apologize and still plant the blame firmly on you? No. Do I excuse their behavior because they're an adult? No. It's one of those things that I think parents get wrong, and it's probably their biggest mistake of all. But I don't know why they do it or how to fix it for you. I can't. I don't know. But I'm just telling you that's something that's going to happen. So that leads me to my second point. Okay? And this is actually where you come in. It's not something that you can do to fix it. It's something that you can do to manage those situations when parents maybe do something wrong and don't apologize. And this is it. The one thing I've learned about teenagers, okay, now I've learned lots of things about teenagers, okay, but one of the most amazing things that I've learned about teenagers is that they are some of the most forgiving people I know. Now, I've called you guys the most judgmental people of yourselves, and not of other people. So I'm not saying you're judgmental people. I think you're just too hard on yourselves. But I say that the second thing that I'm really pinpointing about you guys is that you're some of the most forgiving people I know. I'll give you 2 reasons for that. As a teacher, I've made mistakes. But being a maths teacher, making mistakes is the worst thing for me. I hate it with a passion. Because if there's one thing I don't want to mess up and make mistakes for teenagers, is making mistakes teaching maths. But I've learned that the best thing to do, because we all make mistakes, the best thing to do is to point out your mistake, apologize for it genuinely, and I do, okay, and fix it if I can. That's it. That's all I can do, because we're all humans at the end of the day that make mistakes, and some of them can be fixed and some of them cannot be fixed. Some of them will cost money to fix and others will not. So what am I trying to say in all of this? When I've made mistakes as a teacher, I know teenagers are forgiving because I've experienced it in my teaching. They go, that's okay, sir. We all make mistakes. If you can fix it, great, we move on. And then we carry on. And the second reason why you guys, teenagers, are so forgiving is because I think you know more than most what it is like to be forgiven, and perhaps forgiven often for the mistakes that you have acknowledged along the way. Now there's two sides to this though. Teenagers are forgiving because there are forgiving adults in their lives. Okay? So they experience forgiveness and then go generously reciprocate it. Or they are forgiving because they wish there were forgiving adults in their lives. And so if they gave forgiveness, they perhaps would then receive some forgiveness in return. But either way, teenagers are really forgiving, and perhaps more forgiving of adult mistakes than adults are of teenagers' mistakes. So I want you to keep that in mind. You might never be offered the forgiveness you want, but you can always be better by offering forgiveness when adults make mistakes. And perhaps that will cause them to think differently about their mistakes too. So let me finish up here. Teachers and parents aren't the enemy. And just like you, they mess up and make mistakes. Some will apologize and others will not. Just like some teenagers will and others will not. But let me ask you to do this. Never stop showing the forgiveness you have experienced in your life, or showing the forgiveness you would like to receive in your life. Because that will always make you a better adult, parent, or even teacher one day. So I want to say thank you for always showing forgiveness. You guys are awesome like that, and keep on being awesome like that. Cheers.